welcome to another episode of Lines Then Sport podcast. Very pleased to have on my old friend Shuwel Ahmed. Shuwel, I've not actually seen for about 10 years. About 10, 12.
It's been a while, bro.
It's been a while. It's been a while, man. It's such a pleasure to see you and such a pleasure to hear your story just off air, man. It's great to see what you're doing, not just work-wise, but in the community as well, brother. So I'm really looking to delve into that a little bit more deep today and find out more about you. First of all, obviously, you used to go to South Downs College. Of people who don't know, South Downs College in Portsmouth, Haven't we, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I went Portsmouth College. Used to come down, obviously, try and be cool in our college and stuff.
Yeah. You guys were the cool guys. We were the wannabes.
You had a cool college down there. You had a cool lot. But no, you used to come down. We played football together and stuff. But I want to know more about you, your family. You know, how was it growing up in Portsmouth for yourself? First of all, how was it growing up in Portsmouth?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, just to start off with, Terry, it's great to catch up. I think also for the listeners of the podcast, I've been following the community that you've built from a passion of boxing and how it's expanded beyond. So just congratulations to you on creating this community. And for the listeners, I've known Terry, as he's mentioned, for 10 plus years, but he looks younger than ever. So whatever he's doing with his whatever he's doing with his skincare routine, make sure he shares that with the listeners. But yes, as Terry mentioned, we've known each other for more than 10 years now. I grew up in Portsmouth, the southeast of England. My parents are originally from Bangladesh, so the typical migration story from the 60s or 70s, that's when my dad migrated over. He migrated over as a 13-year-old. He got the opportunity to move to the UK to be the big hope for his family. And then him moving over at the age of 13, he grew up away from his family. He had to do all the typical stuff. So go to school, work at night, and then send money back home to Bangladesh. And then after that, at the age of 16, he didn't get the opportunity to go into further education. He really had to pick between, do I go study or do I go work? And at the time, his family in Bangladesh was so big, it wasn't really a choice. So we went into full-time work. And then later on, he got his own businesses, settled in Portsmouth, met my mum in Bangladesh, got married to her, and then they came back to the UK. And yeah, that's where my parents gave birth to me in 1990, so I'm 32 years old now, and I grew up in Portsmouth. So those early years growing up in Portsmouth, very typical working class background. My dad had his restaurant businesses and my mum was a housewife. Growing up, I wouldn't say we had a lot. A lot of my childhood was actually growing up in council housing. But what was a good element of how my parents raised me is you never felt like there was not enough, actually. You actually felt like there was more than enough to succeed in life. Went to school, and then after school went to college. There I had an interest of economics and business, etc. And then I went to South Downs College in the southeast, and that's where our paths crossed. You went to the cooler college, which was Portsmouth.
I doubt that.
I think
you had a modern college.
Yeah, we did. It was modern at the time. But actually, during that time, I think we also played football a few times together. So it was a really cool community we had.
I think
around
you tried
that age.
playing football.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that right?
Because for the people that are watching this or listening to this and have seen me play football, they're probably shaking their head at what you just said, Terry. But yeah, it's I'll let everyone else decide. Anyone that's seen me play football. But yeah, I tried to play football during that time. But we had a good community of friends, I would say. Community. Yeah. Especially in the Asian community, which I don't think you had before then, as close as we had and as diverse. And then I moved to London for university. And then after that, a ton of opportunities opened up for me. But that's how I would say I was raised in Portsmouth and where our paths crossed.
What's really interesting, you said about Asian community.
Yeah.
Obviously, at college, we had the Asian community. When you were at school, did you have much of an Asian community there?
Not so much. I think, growing up in the school that I went to was Mayfield School in Portsmouth. At the time, there was maybe around 500 to 600 kids. Yeah. Of the 500 to 600 kids, maybe there were 3 to 5 that were non-white British kids. So growing up, actually, I wouldn't say I got a lot of racism, but there were jokes that were made that if you listen to those jokes now, there were definitely racial undertones to it. And growing up is interesting because you grow up and you're surrounded by a particular culture and then you naturally stick out. And I remember growing up thinking, man, I wish I could fit in with this culture. I don't like the food that my mum cooks, or I didn't like the cultural festivities and events that we had growing up. But then it's amazing how actually when you grow up, you realize all those things that made you different, you actually appreciate those even more. I think also growing up and being seen as an outsider whether that's intentional or unintentional by the people around you, it does force you to learn some skills about trying to build relationships, being proud of your roots, or going into environments where naturally you feel like you quote unquote don't belong, but how do I fit in to belong to get to where I need to go? And actually, a lot of those skills that I developed subconsciously become very valuable later on, where I've been able to work in different countries and it's a very similar environment. I moved to Japan and I didn't know anyone in the whole country. And suddenly it's that feeling again that I had when I was growing up. But all those skills and experiences I was able to develop younger actually become extremely valuable the older I get. So that cultural component was a battle during my teenage years, but now the older that I get, the more I appreciate it so much more. And it was now it's such a gift. And to be able to see a British culture, which I love, I have a British passport, I'm a British citizen, but to combine that with the Asian heritage and culture that you and I have got, that we've been blessed with, it's a blessing, I would say.
Our cultures, we've got different, but they're so full of richness.
Exactly.
So full of different colors and passion and stuff. That's what makes us so proud. And you remember when I was in college, I used to say, "Yeah, I'm this."
Very proud, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then that's the sort of pride I used to feel because I was never able to display that in school.
Yeah, interesting.
I was the only Asian person. I was the only coloured person in school. Asian person, or I don't know if you say colour now, but Asian person in school. So being able to express that in college was great. I was able to do that with other people.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful to do. You mentioned about your family, your dad. Your dad had restaurants, right?
Yes. Yeah.
How was that? How was that for him?
It was good. I mean, it was one of those things where if I think back to my childhood, some of the most fun periods were when we would go to the park. My dad would have a very simple football. He'll kick it up in the air, and then me and my brothers would chase the ball. But then there were also a lot of times where he wasn't there because he was so busy with work. So I saw firsthand with entrepreneurship, when things are going great, lots of gifts are being bought for us. Any video or cassette we wanted, he would pay for it. Anywhere that we wanted to go, he would take us. But then I also saw the downside where he overextended himself to open up another additional restaurant or to partner with another person, or the economy goes down. And I saw the struggle that happens in that case as well. Also, my dad, he made some investing decisions during his career, like many parents do. And I also saw what happens when maybe you don't make the best long-term investments because you don't have the best information, or whether you're not partnering with the right people as well. So I think these are all lessons, subconsciously or consciously, I've been able to see from him where he struggled and where he had a lot of success, and try and carry that through to what I'm doing now as well. I think it's for all of us, whether your family is going through lots of positive success or whether they've gone through challenges. If you actually just sit down and reflect on some of those lessons, then long term it can pay off a lot of benefit for us. And ultimately, that's what parents are trying, right? It wasn't intentional, some of the challenging periods, but he tried his best. But I think with that, there was a lot of lessons that I learned, and ultimately created a life that made me the person that I am today. So,
what key skills did you think you learned with your dad?
So if I take out the professional stuff, I mean, when you think about your parents and you are asked to think about what did your parents tell you, there are probably lots of phrases in your brain that you always heard your mum and dad say. So my dad would always tell me, look, if you're going to do anything, make sure you do it properly and you fully commit to it. Very simple phrase, but he said it over and over again. It's in my head. He also had phrases like, make sure you don't hate anyone because everyone's trying their best. Again, these are phrases that I've just kept in my mind, autoplay as well. He also had one around, boring people get bored. So don't be bored, just be less boring. So I think there was a phrase where as kids, you get a bit tired of stuff and you always want to do stuff. But he was very big on reading books, being educated. And I think these are all threads that if I think about my life now growing up, they've all become very common foundational blocks for me that I almost don't think about now. On the flip side of it, he was working a lot. Diet and nutrition and sleep were not priorities. And these are also areas where now that I'm approaching my 30s to 40s, I need to be very conscious about the health habits that I have. I know you're big on fitness and sports and having that built into your life, but I see what happens when you don't have that. So again, I think if you sit and reflect on your parents, the good things and the things that you can learn from, it really does give you a good building block moving forward. It's just whether people have the time to reflect on those things or not.
Is training a big part of your life now?
Now it is, yeah. I'd say probably from the age of 16, when I was a very chubby teenager with glasses.
I didn't want to bring that out.
Yeah, I was a chubby teenager with glasses. I remember I had to get ready for prom, and the suits that I liked weren't in the size that I wanted. So I knew I needed to lose weight for prom, and nothing will get a young kid more motivated than getting ready for the suit that he wants, for the date that he wants as well. So I got all of that in gear. And then since, I would say, really from the age of 16, there's been an element of training of some shape, whether it's trying to lose weight, whether it's trying to bulk, whether it's trying to find a good space in between. There's always been an element of training now in the background. And God willing, I think that's why I'm in a good health position now, and it's something that I don't even think about. It's become really ingrained into my daily habits.
Well, one thing we didn't talk about your upbringing is your influence of your mum.
Yes, yeah.
I'm keen to talk about that and the influence that your mum had on your life as well.
So my mum, is the CEO of the Ahmed household. There's a lot of things that are portrayed in the media about people from a Muslim background or certain cultures that women are oppressed or women are maybe not allowed to be who they want. I can tell you, if I use my mother and my aunties as a case study, these are the people that are running everything behind the show. My mum, the values that she installed were don't complain and just get on with it. She was also the person that was never bringing drama to her family or the people around her. So she was always the one trying to keep everyone happy, keep everyone together, and also long-term valuing what's important. So really spending time with the family as much as possible. And these are values that that are important in any day and age, even more so, I think, nowadays. And I think without my mum in the background, then I wouldn't be the person that I am today. On the flip side, where I think my mum was a bit more on the controlling side, if you want to call it, when I said to her at 18, Mum, I want to move outside of Portsmouth to go to university in London, her first answer was no, her second answer was no, and her third answer was no. So she didn't want me to leave. She wanted her kids to be around, which is fair enough. I was the oldest child. But then eventually it got to the point where I got a place in a London university and I had the opportunity to leave home to go to London. I remember that day where I packed all my stuff to leave Portsmouth and getting to the door, and my mum was crying her eyes out at the front door, seeing her oldest child leave. And she didn't, not that she didn't want me to go away, but she just wanted to keep her kids close.
Yeah.
And that's the element that I think I learned from my mum, where you can have that connection with your children, you can love them as much as you want. But long term, if they need to leave the home or do something that maybe you don't necessarily approve of, but long term it has a dividend and a good benefit, then you have to support it. Unfortunately, my dad was the person where, from an Asian community perspective, moving abroad, moving out of the town at that time wasn't so common. But he was like, son, if you've got a right opportunity and you think long term it will help, then you should really push on. So that's something that maybe my mum was a bit more constrained with, her parenting. But everything else, that's 10x the value that she's brought to my life. And yeah, still very close with her today.
What made you want to go to London? I know your mum, because I know it's very difficult when your mum says no. Yeah. What still made you go, do you know what, I'm going to London? Because I know one thing I want to say as well, one thing I remember is you were very educationally astute. You know, I used to come in, you used to say, I got A's. It was me with my C's, and I was like, come on, man, what's going on?
Yeah.
But no, that's one thing that stood out from you straight away.
Sure.
You're very educationally astute. Why was it that you still wanted to go to London?
So I think that educational astute element, one thing I would just mention on that is the reason why that was very important was when I was growing up, my dad would always remind me that I couldn't go into college and university because I had to support my family. So when you get to that age, I want to make sure that you don't have anything to worry about and you focus on education and make the most of that opportunity, because I couldn't get that. So that was always drummed into me from an early age. Yeah. Even then, there were challenging periods about, I want to do this subject. My dad was saying, do that subject. We had a lot of interesting conversations, but that's why he drummed into that education was important. But then when I moved to college, there was just this element where I grew up in Portsmouth. My parents were very strict when I was growing up, to the point where before the age of 16, when our paths crossed, before then, My dad wouldn't let me hang out with kids outside of school. It was always homework as a priority. The school that I went to at that time was one of the worst behaving schools in
Mayfield,
Portsmouth.
really?
Mayfield, yeah, it was actually it was my fifth choice of school at the time. From a behavior perspective, it wasn't the best. So he wanted to make sure that I was protected so I could focus on the right topics. And then because I grew up in such a constrained environment, naturally when I went to college, I wanted to hang out with people like you in other colleges and explore. And then I thought, I want to go to a big city like London. So let me just apply for the universities in London that do my course and then go from there.
How was your time at university first? How was that experience?
Man, it was
Because going away, it really opens up your eyes, don't it? It
Yeah.
really, I mean, especially at that age, what, you're 17, 18?
18, yeah. So I was 18, I moved to London. I went from, as I just described, very constrained childhood with my very strict parents to now, Shuwel, you're moving to a big city, you're the oldest child, you need to set an example, you got really good grades, so you need to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Got there, and then suddenly, without my parents overlooking what I'm doing and giving me that behavior control, I ended up going out a lot, partying a lot, not going to any lectures. And then at the end of my first year of university, bear in mind, I was the big hope for the family, the oldest child, got all the good grades. First year comes, the summer arrives the year after. I get my results and I failed my first year of university.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What did your parents say to that?
Well, they weren't happy, but I didn't tell them until later on. I remember seeing that letter and I was like, man, like I'm the big hope for my parents. And now I failed my first year of uni. Maybe I'm not as smart as I thought. Maybe my focus is not as good. Maybe the people that I'm surrounded with, they're not the right people. All these stuff start going through your mind. But I was like, look, I need to make this work because my parents are expecting this from me. So for what would have been my second year of university, I moved to London again. I tried to apply for big internships at big companies, but they see a guy who's just failed his first year of uni, so no one wants to hire you. The best job that I could find at the time was selling suits and dresses with Ted Baker in Kings Road in London in the Chelsea area. So it's a very nice area of London. Yeah. I was doing that part-time, and then I was studying the 2 modules that I failed in parallel as well. And I did that for a year. And man, in that year, I learned so many life lessons that became more important later on. And then I finished that year, and then I eventually passed. And after passing, I said to myself 2 things. One is that I will never fail again like that. And 2, I can never be in a position where I'm not putting maximum effort in. If I put maximum effort in and I fail, then it's okay. But I can't let anything drop because of my effort and a lack of focus. And long term, that was the best thing that happened to me, I'd say, at university. After that, then it was all good.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you finished university. It took you, is it 4 years?
4 years, yeah.
4 years to do that. And then you got an internship at...
a big corporate company called Novartis.
I have problems saying it, so I'm gonna let you pronounce that.
Yeah. So it was a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where a lot of your listeners, maybe if they're not familiar with the industry, which a lot of people aren't familiar with the industry, I think the way that I would describe it is a company where ultimately there are people that get ill and sick. When people are ill and sick, they go to the hospital or they go to a provider to provide them with medicine. We are ultimately, at the time, the previous company that I worked at, I'm not there anymore, they would provide the medicine to the hospitals or the healthcare providers that will ultimately make people feel better for the long run. In that 4 years that I spent in London, I studied economics and accounting, so I just wanted to get into banking or something in London. London was the main city for me. Didn't want to move abroad, had no interest to travel. London was the thing. So then at that time, like many graduates, you probably have young listeners or listeners of all ages, you apply for lots of internship opportunities. So there was one opportunity that came on my table, which was to go to Switzerland for 3 months. And in the initial interview, I was like, okay, it sounds interesting, but let's just go for it. Bombed the first interview, but I had all these other ones lined up at big banks and consulting firms and accounting firms. During the process of the beginning of summer, all these roles, for one reason or another, I got to the final interview, partner interview, etc., but none of them really gave me an offer that I wanted. And then the internship opportunity to go to Switzerland came back and they said, we really liked your first interview, no idea why or how, and we'd love to give you a second interview. For the second interview, I prepared as best as I could. Then they said yes. And this internship opportunity, just to frame it for the listeners, so it was a 12-week opportunity. Before I go to Switzerland, they flew me to New York on a business class flight for a training for 2 weeks there. And then I flew to Switzerland for 3 months. And then at the end of those 3 months, then I would need to find a full-time role because they weren't offering full-time opportunities for people at that age. I was like 21 or 22 at the time.
Yeah.
Moved to Switzerland, loved that 3-month experience. And then at the end of it, they said, look, Shuwel, we really like what you've done. We like what you're doing. We like your profile. If you wanted to stay, we could offer you a full-time role. So I said yes before they changed their mind, especially after seeing the contract. And then that was in 2012, and I was with that company until 2023, so earlier this year.
What was your first paycheck like that you signed on for?
Oh man, well I don't want to disclose numbers in the public forum, but I can just say that when I took that internship opportunity, it wasn't the best paying opportunity from an internship perspective, right? But then at the end of the summer, actually, one thing that was interesting, on day one, the HR person that was leading us told us as a group of 6 interns, guys, make the most of this summer because we don't offer students of your age full-time opportunities. So really make the most of it, but you will have to find another opportunity when you go back. Now, I think that was helpful because A, it set expectations at the beginning, and B, it really unleashed us to make the most of the experience. So make the most of the work, but also make the most of the travel opportunities. And I think actually because she said that to us on day one, that allowed us to make the most of the summer. So then at the end, after making the most of the summer professionally and personally, when they said, look, we really love 2 of you, there were 6 of us in total, they liked 2 of us, and we want you to stay. And here is the contract, which is a very attractive contract, a contract where at the time was much higher than what graduate schemes in London were offering, which was the initial goal at the time. And once that contract was put in front of us, then again, as I said, I had to say yes before they changed their mind. And then it really gave me a platform to then save, invest, travel, and do all these other things after that subsequent period. So to go back to your question, it's a very long answer, but I would say very attractive what they offered and a lot higher than other graduate positions at the time.
And where did ultimately you were at the company for, so 2012 to 2023, sorry, 11 years?
Yes, 11
right?
years. Yeah.
And where did the company take you?
Yeah, so
In terms of career-wise, in terms of traveling around the world, where did it
yeah,
end up
so
with?
there's a lot being said nowadays about working in a company versus working as an entrepreneur or finding your own business. Now, for me personally, I think working in any company, whatever shape or form, is one of the best places to learn because not only are you developing your skill sets, you're developing your network, you're developing a sense of professionalism. On top of all of that, you're getting paid at the same time as well. So rather than thinking, oh, well, I could have my own business, etc. Depending on where you are on your journey, you're getting paid to learn skills. And if it's a good company, then you can really grow. Now, for me, in that 11-year period at the same company, on the surface, it sounds like it could be a very similar monotonous experience. But actually, in those 11 years, I worked in finance, strategy, and sales and marketing. I also had the opportunity to learn how to lead a team. I also had the opportunity to work in Switzerland, where our headquarters were, surrounded by the CEO, the CFO, very senior leaders from very different backgrounds. So just absorbing as much as I could from them. On top of that, I got the chance to live and work in Asia. So I spent 2 years in Tokyo, which was an unbelievable experience as well. And then in recent years, I had the chance to work in the Scandinavian countries. So I had 2 years in Stockholm and another 2 years in Denmark and Copenhagen. Now, if I wanted to do that on my own with my own business, it's not impossible, but to have the support of a very large organization, to give the listeners some context, it's about a 100,000 employee organization, and per year they're generating around $50 billion in sales. So it's a very sizable company. So with that, it gave me the platform to learn, develop, but also save up money to invest in other ventures that we will probably talk about later on as well.
Yeah, about your other ventures, going on quite nicely. You told me a little bit about your other ventures. You're involved in properties. Is there any other ventures that you're involved in, or is it just properties at the moment?
Yeah, so real estate is really the big one.
Yeah.
And that's under my company structure, Ahmed Capital Group. So I actually started off with buying a few properties under my personal name. And like many listeners or who may be in the property space, I bought my first property in 2014. And when I bought that first one, I thought I knew everything about real estate. I thought I was like a real estate mogul.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm on the road to $1 billion. But it's like anything. I think the younger you are, the more kind of ego you think you have. But then the older you get, the more you mature and you realize actually there's so much that I don't know. There's a better way to play these games, which I know previous guests on your podcast have also mentioned to a certain extent. I bought my second one in 2017 when I was living in Japan. So everything has been bought while I was living abroad. So that forced me to learn about building partnerships with people here in the UK. It helped me learn about systemizing and setting up processes. It helped me learn about not actually having to be in the country to do these types of things. And then in recent years, we've really scaled. So real estate is the big thing. And then there's an element of giving back. So there's a common thread where I'm trying to give a younger me information that I wish I knew earlier on. So when that was in Novartis, what that meant is starting my own work experience program, which we call Pupils to Professionals.
Okay.
And there what we do is we try and find kids initially in the UK from Portsmouth who are coming from low-income households, and we brought them to Switzerland in 2014 for their first ever work experience. Because I thought when I was in Switzerland, if I could find an environment like this when I was 14, 15, how much bigger could I have started to think? So then it started off with bringing kids from the UK, 15, 16, to Switzerland. And then now with Pupils to Professionals, we've been able to help more than 600 kids around the globe through that initiative. And then I have a podcast called Take Flight Podcast with some friends of mine that we've been doing for a few years. It's more of a passion project and a few other interests as well. But I'd probably put those three as the key components.
I love the school one you're doing.
Yeah.
That's such a brilliant way of giving back. Because you're absolutely right. How many people our age would have hoped for the opportunity to see this is actually available? Is that you're doing it by yourself, or are you doing it with anyone else?
Yeah, so that one,
did you do it with anyone else?
The way it started to scale. So in 2014, we brought 2 kids from the UK to Switzerland. They're able to meet very senior leaders around the company that they typically wouldn't get access to. And the idea was to plant the seed in them of the different paths that are possible. Then the year after, we did a few more kids. The year after, we did a few more kids. And then I got invited to an organizational event called One Young World, where what they do is it's tied to the UN, and they invite young leaders from different companies around the globe to come together, share ideas on how they're trying to make the world a better place. Now, in that event, I met people and I shared with them this Pupils to Professionals initiative. You get companies to agree to host and bring these kids from different countries. And there I met a great leaders from Africa, East Africa and West Africa, and I shared with them the idea that I had. Takumbo and James, if they're listening, shout out to you guys. And then I shared with them the idea of Pupils to Professionals. And I said, look, we could scale this around the globe. If you can help in Africa, in your parts, then I can help coordinate in Switzerland and other areas, and let's go from there. After bringing them on board, and then other people that I've met along the way, we've been able to scale through other countries in Africa and Europe, but also share this initiative with other schools in the UK as well, where I've been able to go and speak to the kids about working at Novartis, some of the stuff that we're talking about on the podcast, to really inspire them to think about the next phase. And we've got some exciting things in the pipeline as well.
Have you, since you started it 2014, it's now been 9 years?
Yeah. Have
you had any kids that have come up to you and said, you know what, you inspired me, I'm now working for Novartis?
So,
have you had any stories like that coming?
So none of them are working at Novartis, and I think that's a good thing actually, because what I wanted to do is to show them if I'm doing this now and I only learned about this stuff when I was 21, 22, then if you're learning about this at 15, 16, then you should be shooting even higher. You should be going way beyond what I'm doing now. And some of the early people of the program, you got to think they're quite young, so now they're going into university age. A few of them have actually gone on to Oxbridge University, so they've gone on to study and aspire for more. A lot of them have gone to some really good universities in the UK, and some of the early ones are now coming into the professional setting. And I'm still in touch with a lot of them as well, and they're all doing inspiring things. But I think that was the big takeaway, where there was one kid who was very shy, didn't even have a passport before we wanted to take him to Switzerland. And now he's going on to study at an Oxbridge University, and this is the floor of what he's doing. So I'm sure he'll achieve even more in the future.
Amazing, and that's down to some of the great work that you've started.
I think that our work is really just a platform. It's down to the kids to ultimately do the work, right? That's all I can do. So it's down to him, his support system, and everything. So I'm just a part of his story, and what he will go on to achieve will be much bigger.
Amazing, man. So you decided to leave the company in this year?
Yes, yeah.
You left this year to start your own journey in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Crazy. Obviously, your country. We talked to your country manager now.
Yeah.
You're obviously well paid, great company, great opportunity there, and you're leaving it all to. I don't want to say take a risk, but bet in yourself.
Yeah.
You're betting in yourself by now going into real estate, as you said.
Yeah.
How does that all come about? And talk about the influence your brothers have as well.
Yeah.
In this whole project, please.
Yeah. So I think, I started working at the company at 21 years old, and then I got to 2023, so I was 32. I also got married last year as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to getting marriage advice from you after being 4 years in the game.
Yeah.
But all these factors came together where I was reflecting, where I saw this great path that I was on, and I'm very fortunate that I was supported as well as I have been in the company. But I always had this burning desire inside of me of what full-time entrepreneurship could look like. And I could see the path that I was on. I'd very happily continue that path and get to 40. But I always had that question in my head of what would it have looked like if I took a step out and tried something else for a while. Then the opportunity presented itself where this year I could take the option to leave the company. And it was in a way where I would have enough of a runway for a couple of years through the options that I had, etc., to take the most of that opportunity. Now, there weren't many windows where I would be presented with that. And I think with the fact that I got married in the previous year, our real estate business, Ahmed Capital Group, was getting to a really good level as well. And the fact that I had a runway of my stock options and all these other things that gave me a runway of 18 to 24 months. Then you put all those factors together, and I thought, okay, if I don't do it now, then I probably will never do it. And then I had the last conversation. I had many conversations with mentors, advisors, people that worked in the company, outside the company, and all of them said that, sure, really give this a go, and the door is always open in case you ever wanted to come back. So those two conversations were important. And then the last one was with my wife, and this is a lesson for anyone who's trying to find a good life partner. She's always known me in a great big company, very attractive career, also with the real estate stuff on the side. And then if you have that, then suddenly telling your partner that I'm thinking about quitting, not all of them would be very supportive of that. But she said, look, I trust your judgment. I trust what you're going to do. I know your potential, and I know that whatever happens, you will figure it out. So I think that was the last message that I needed. And after that, I had a conversation with the company. I said, look, thank you for all the amazing support, but this is a really personal ambition of mine. And now I've moved to full-time entrepreneurship. So what does that look like now? One element is with Ahmed Capital Group. With this, we've now scaled a sizable portfolio. We should end the year around 4 to 5 million in terms of portfolio value. That would not have been possible without my brothers being here on the ground in the UK the last few years. And without their support, it would not be where it is today. And also our investors and also the partners that help on the construction side. But then the other element that I'm very curious about is to understand what owning my own business could look like beyond the real estate company that I have, but something in the healthcare segment or an area that I'm very curious and passionate about, which is healthcare, which is the industry that I've been in for the last 10, 11 years. We've had some very interesting conversations with business owners, revenue ranging from 5 to 25 million, very positive conversations, but at certain hurdles, it hasn't met our requirement of what we're looking for. But I've learned a hell of a lot. This is now June 2023, so I've been 6 months into this now. I've learned a lot so far, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm enjoying the time that I've never really had before in my career, being abroad and elsewhere. So spending more time with the family, traveling with my wife. My brother's getting married. My other one's just started university. These are all things that I wouldn't have been able to support as much if I was in a corporate career. So enjoying that element. Yeah.
What role did your brothers have to play specifically? What did they do in the company to help you while you were doing the corporate life?
Yeah, so at the beginning with the first properties that I was buying, I was trying to do everything myself.
Yeah.
So if there was an issue, they'd call me, which is fine when you're in the same time zone, but Japan is 9 hours difference between here and the UK. And that forced me to realize that I need people on the ground. So initially I had the builders that don't show up, the agents that don't pick up your call. I learned all the mistakes. And then ultimately I realized, look, I have my brothers there. They're both younger than me. They're doing their own thing, but they do have an element of time that they can dedicate to this. And also there's an element of trust. When it's your family, I know they are thinking about the best interest, not for them, but us as a collective family unit. So my brothers helped out initially with, if there's any issues, then they be the first point of call. If it's below a certain threshold in terms of cost to fix it, then they just fix it directly. If it's higher than that, then they contact me. Then it evolved over time where one of my younger brothers helps to model out the financial element because he's working in a finance role in a blue chip company. And then my middle brother is almost heading our operations element, which means any new tenants that are coming in, they speak to him. Any old tenants that have an issue, they speak to him. If there's any project management work with our builds, then my brother goes to oversee it to make sure it's all running on track. And then ultimately they're getting paid for their time and they're learning about the game at the same time as well. So I wanted to set it up in a way where I didn't need to dedicate so much time to it, and I can focus on the areas where I can really bring forward the business. That's working with investors and negotiating on deals. So that's the element that I take care of now.
What role do investors have to play in your company?
Yeah.
Obviously, are they quite an important part, or is it something you can do by yourself?
Yeah, so I think it got to the point where you do the first properties, you understand the element of buying something, refurbishing it, and then refinancing out. And I got to the point where I got this blueprint, and then I invested about £25,000 in my education, because in 2014, as I mentioned, I thought I knew everything because I was 24 years old buying my first property. And then it got to the point where it was 2019 and I realized, you know what, Shuwel, put your ego to one side. You don't know anything about this game. If you want to do it properly, then learn from the people who are doing it properly. And then to learn from them, then typically you'll need to pay. So I actually invested about £25,000 of my own money to be in these networks, to do these 12-month mastermind programs and learn from the people who are really doing it. And when I met those people, there were people who were earning significantly less money than I am, but they had more properties and they were doing it a lot quicker. So I was thinking, how are these guys doing it, or girls as well? And the big unlock for me was you don't need to be there. So you just get your own team set up. So that's where my brothers came in. You also don't always need to do it with your own finances. So if you can show that you know what you're doing and you have a good investor base to work with, then you can give them attractive returns. And the third element was, if you combine all of that, you document what you're doing, then there's no reason why you can't scale a lot quicker. And then what I did very simply is I found properties where I can offer short-term investing options. So if you're an investor with ACG, what does that look like? We don't offer any equity in the business. What we offer is we offer loan opportunities. So people who are looking and who've got 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 sat in their bank and probably getting a very low interest rate. A lot of our investors are, I would say, professionals. So they're working in large corporates. They've got very high pension pots. They've also got their own portfolio of investments, and they've got a pot of money that they're just leaving in their bank. What they would do is we would find a project where we can allocate those funds. With those funds, we offer them a return anywhere between 6 to 10% per year, depending on how much they lend to us. And then with those funds, we then transfer that into a project. We look to purchase a project on a short-term lending between 12 to 18 months. In that 12 to 18-month period, we force the refurbishment. So we add additional units, we do loft conversions, we do extensions. And our developments have ranged from £30,000 refurb to £250,000 refurbs. And then on the back end, when we get it revalued at a higher amount, we're able to pull out as much money that we came in with. We pay back our investors with their 6 to 10% return. We keep the asset, and then we just do this on a multiplied basis. So that's how we work.
And they've got the option to invest with you in the future as well.
Exactly, yeah. So what I'm very proud about is that a lot of our early investors have decided to reinvest with multiple projects, and these are long-term relationships. And these are people who are ranging from America to Australia, people that I've worked with in the past, people that I've interned with in the past. Some of my oldest friends have also partnered with me as well. So I think that's a testament of what we've been able to build with the processes that we have, the systems that we have, and also being very transparent with people about how we're doing it and some of the challenges we faced as well.
What's some of the challenges you faced?
Oh man, so I've had
there's many in properties.
Yeah, I mean, you know this better than many people, Terry, and your family would as well. But the typical things: we didn't have a tenant that refused to pay their rent for 9 months, so that cost us almost 8 to 10 grand to get them out. We've had builders that have taken our money and then not shown up. We've had investors actually that have committed to investing, and then for whatever reason, last minute they can't because of a family circumstance before we're about to start a multi-thousand-pound development deal. There's been all these challenges, right? But through those, there's always a lesson through that. Now we've got a great team of construction partners. We've got a really good agent. We've got a really good group of investors that we work with. But all of these are lessons that come through it. But yeah, I think during the challenging period, what I have to tell myself is if I didn't want it to be this hard, then I shouldn't have got in the game. And however difficult I think this is, it's only going to get even more difficult in the future when we're at hundreds of units and stuff. So just appreciating where I'm at now, but it's part of the journey.
One thing I get from yourself straight away is the belief that you have within yourself. And it's good.
Yeah.
The belief that you're saying, I'm going to reach 100 units. I've done this. You know, where does that confidence and stuff come from?
So I think the confidence comes from my dad was very big on having confidence when we were growing up. And it's one of those things where you went through those ups and downs, but he was like, look, always be confident in yourself, because that's the first foundation of anything that you're trying to do. The other element is having confidence through the losses that I've taken. Thinking that I was the man at university and then failing that first year of university makes you really check yourself. Wanting to work in big companies and them saying, look, you failed the first year of university. How do you think you can even work our company, right? There's a lot of these humbling experiences that you go through, which make me realize that, man, I don't know as much as I do, but I know that as long as after those elements, because I've put the effort in, I've always got the result that I've wanted. Or if it's not the result that I've wanted, as long as I've kept at it, then it's been an even bigger and better result at the end. So I think it comes across as confident now, but it's built on a lot of lessons and a lot of actions that I've taken. But then I also recognize, and this is extremely important, that in anything that I'm in now, I'm a student of the game, and I'm learning from everyone that I come across. And that switch in my mid-20s has been a huge unlock. Whereas now, whatever experiences that I've spoken about on this podcast, there are so many areas that I'm still learning about, that I'm very early in. And having that humble approach actually gives me the confidence to know that I'm not going to have any blind spots, because I'm always having this learner mindset. But to your question, it was going through a lot of failures that gave me that, and also having the humility that now I'm still a student in a lot of these elements, whether it's getting married or having kids, which I hope to learn from you, or having a great podcast and community. There's always an element that I can learn from others. So that's why having that is important.
Yeah, man. Look, humbleness. I've heard that a few times from you already. And I think as you said, it's really important if you want to. We can learn, as you said, we can learn off everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone, no matter who it is, we can learn off everybody. It's just you're going to be open-minded to willing to learn, right? Where does that part of you come from? Is it your faith?
Yeah, I think faith is an important element, because ultimately, being raised as a Muslim, I've had my own journey with faith. I'd say probably in my 20s, I was less leaning towards it and more experimental towards other things.
Yeah.
And then the older that I get, especially after my father was hospitalized, it became even more important in my later 20s. But there's definitely an element of that comes from faith, I would say. And yeah, you know, you're humbled in terms of almost losing a parent, or a business lesson, or applying for a role that I didn't get. All these things over time, I think, remind you of that. And I've also almost lost close friends from illnesses very early on, and I think it reminds you of what's really important in life. And there's a book called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, which I recommend for any of the listeners. Yeah. But there's an element where sometimes your ego can block you from opportunities as well. So it's trying to find that right balance where it doesn't block you from opportunities that actually have a much bigger long-term impact, personally or professionally.
Yeah. There's two things that I want to touch base on. Is your faith, because we've talked about it a little bit. You've touched about it. You don't want to go too much into it. Yeah. But you know, if you don't mind me saying, is in your 20s you said you weren't too much into. You moved away from your faith.
Yeah.
Am I right to say that?
Yeah.
Why was that? What was the situation with that? Is it because you were going at university and stuff like that? But I'll let you explain.
Yes, exactly that, Terry. So, you know, as I said earlier in the podcast, my parents were very strict on me growing up, which at the time I hated, but now as an adult, I'm so grateful that they did that to me. Yeah. So what that meant also was that we grew up in a Muslim household, which meant praying, which meant not drinking alcohol, avoiding certain foods, fasting during Ramadan as well. And then at the age of 16, I had a little bit of freedom. I went to college, and that's where we met. Yeah. And then you start to get interested by the opposite sex. You start to get interested about going out. You do things that teenagers do, right? And then it got to the age of 18 where I moved to London. And ultimately, if I failed my first year of London, that wasn't because I was studying too much. It was probably because I was studying not enough and going out a lot. And then between that age of 18 to, I'd say, 28, that was a period where I moved away from faith. So I wasn't praying as much as I should have. I wasn't fasting during the month of Ramadan as I should have. I did things that were forbidden against the religion in Islam. So I would drink alcohol, I would party, and all these other things that come with it. But during that period, I still always had that faith that Islam for me is the one true faith. The idea of having a God above us that is guiding us, but also wanting us to avoid temptation. There was always that belief inside me. But then when I was 27, my dad was hospitalized. And when he was hospitalized, suddenly everyone looked to me to be like the head of the family because I was the oldest child. Then I remember flying from Tokyo, where I was living at the time, to back to the UK where my dad was in hospital. And at that time, the only thing that I could think of was my faith. And I was praying to God to get us through this period. And I was praying to him that if he got us through this period, then once we get through it, I would ensure that I will always be forever grateful to him for getting us through. And it was those moments where you don't have anything to rely on that you end up relying on what's really important. And for me at that time, it was family and faith. And since then, every year I'm in no shape or form a perfect Muslim, and I'm not saying that I am. There are people that I have around me that have much stronger faith and guide me better. But every year since then, I've been trying to do something that gets me one step closer to faith, whether that means every year trying to pray a little bit more, whether that means fasting for the whole month of Ramadan, whether that means quitting alcohol, whether that means not going out, whether that means not doing all these other things that are an element of going against the faith. And now we're in 2023, so it's been like a 5 to 6 year journey. There's still so much more to go. I'm still a student in that game as well, but that's definitely given me the right pieces to ensure that long term everything that I'm doing is sustainable and I'm doing it for the right reasons.
Does faith give you peace?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, for anyone that's out there, whatever religion you are, if it has some form of prayer, in the Islamic faith, you pray 5 times a day. And those are the periods in the day where you actually don't need to, you block out everything else. And wherever you think you are, or wherever you think you're doing that's great in life, nothing will give you more humility than getting down on your knees to pray for something that's bigger than you. And then at the end of it, what I love about prayer is not so much the prayer itself, because that in itself is quite a meditative practice, but the fact that I have to pray to get to the point where at the end I can ask God for what I need help with. And I think there's a power in that. You have to do an action to get what you want. And during those periods where everything that I've prayed for has, God willing, come true in some shape or form. And ultimately, he helped me have that relationship with my dad that we've been able to continue as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to get into when it comes to faith, because I know you're also someone that has a strong faith. And I know there's different religions out there, different cultures out there, but there's some commonalities I think a lot of people can agree on.
There is definitely some commonalities, especially when I've talked to Muslim people. It's really interesting how all the faiths interact, right? We all believe in one God. It's just really simple faith, really.
Yeah.
But people make it a bit more complicated, right?
Exactly.
That's a conversation for another time. I want to find out about you. Just one last question, because I was really interested about your corporate life, and I remember it's just come to my head when you were when I've seen posts of you before about the 6-minute diary. Is it 6-minute diary?
Yeah.
I did a 6-minute diary.
Oh yeah.
I used to do a 5-minute diary.
Yes.
I did a 6-minute diary.
Yeah.
Can you tell people the importance of that? Because it changed my life massively.
Yeah. So it's I have to give a shout out to the company called Your Best Self. So I've actually done collaborations with them and giveaways with them. So it's an amazing company to work with.
Are they the ones who created the 6-minute
diary?
Okay,
yes. They're the company that creates it. Now the 6-minute diary. So around this time, 2017, 2018, when my dad was in hospital, I was doing a job that I liked but I didn't love. And then the property stuff, it was just before we started to scale. So I was trying to figure out how can I do this in a better way. Now, when I looked at the practices of very successful people, there was always an element of mindfulness that they spoke about, whether that's meditation, whether that's prayer, whether that's journaling. And at that time, that's when I had a really big mindset shift where, okay, let me try to do what all these successful people are doing and see what works for me. Now, what worked for me during that time was meditation. So that's an important habit that I started in 2018, and the practice of journaling. And at that time, I had a piece of paper and I would just journal on a piece of paper the things that went really well that day, what I could have done better, and what I'm trying to do the next time. And it started off very simply with a piece of paper. And then I transitioned into getting a journal because I really wanted to document this and document my thoughts and help figure out a lot of stuff. So this is where I came across the 6-minute diary. It doesn't need to be the 6-minute diary. It can be other products that you use. But the principle is you spend some time in the morning writing about what you're grateful for, what you're trying to achieve in the day, and anything that can get you motivated to start the day. And then at the end of the day, you write down what went well, what could have gone better, and what you would have done differently. Now, this was a practice that I started in 2018, and now I'm proud to say that I've continued that since now 2023. Now, what that means is I've got in my bookshelf 6 years worth of thoughts, ideas, challenges, when my dad was in hospital, what I was thinking at the time, before I was able to scale the real estate stuff, how could I really do this? I was thinking about changing careers. I was thinking about how to quit my job. All these elements, right, where you've been trying to think and figure out different ideas. Nothing was more powerful than just writing my thoughts down. And what's amazing is because I've got it all documented in a book, I can go back to different periods of my life, read it back and think, man, I'm so grateful that I went through that period. And this is what I've now learned. And over time, like anything, whether it's investing in real estate, your marriage, everything compounds over time for the better. And now when I read back those 6 years, there is no better analysis than the self-analysis that you've gone through. And having that documented is extremely powerful. So anyone that's out there and thinking about it, all I would say is try, whether it's meditation, whether it's journaling, whether it's exercise, whatever it is that gets you in the right mindset, I would recommend just giving it a try and find whatever you think sticks and then just sticking to it long run. Because I know by the time I'm a grandfather, I can't wait to consolidate these thoughts and then share these with my son and daughter or family moving forward. And it definitely helps during those more challenging periods.
Did you do exercise in the morning as well?
Yeah.
So did you do 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, or was it longer?
Yeah, so I tried lots of different things. So before then, working out in the evening was a big thing.
Okay.
And I hated waking up early in the morning. And then again, if I looked at what successful people were doing, all of them were early risers, or most of them. They were doing some shape of or form of mindfulness. And they were also doing some form of exercise in the morning. So I flipped everything around and I tried that element. And now all of that has stayed. The early morning workouts.
5 a.m.?
5 a.m.s, yeah.
Good
So
man.
actually I set my alarm for 4:45 on weekdays. I'm not one of these weekend people who does it 7 days in a row. There's different things you hear on the internet, but for me, what works is Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my wife would kill me if I do that on the weekends. And then start off with some mindfulness, start off with trying to get the most important task of the day done, and then going to the gym and getting a good workout in. I hope to train with you as well soon.
We'll do something soon, definitely, brother. We'll do something soon. It's just the only reason I'm asking was 5 a.m. for me was massive.
Yeah.
It was massive getting up, 20-minute training if it was going for a 2-mile run.
Yeah, nice.
Go for do you know these circuit classes
Yes,
and that, do something like that in the morning. Then do the mindfulness and then do the gratitude when you're writing in the book.
Yeah.
That worked for me magically for a year.
Yeah.
One thing that didn't work for me was consistency.
Yeah, okay.
How do you manage consistency?
So one thing that I realized over the years was whenever there was a period where I had to do something really intense, I stopped for a second and I reflected, like, why am I suddenly having to work 14, 15-hour days when I could have done all of this in 5, 6, 7, 8 if I worked in an efficient way? And the reason why I was going through these intense periods was because I was trying to catch up for not doing the work before. So say suddenly if I'm going to the gym two days a week, so 2 times a day, the only reason why I'm going to the gym 2 times a day is because the previous month I wasn't going, and now I'm trying to catch up and lose all the weight that I've gained. So one thing that I find very important is to try and balance consistency versus intensity, because now I don't like to do things so intense, but as long as I'm consistent with it, then I never need to be intense with it. So that's why I try to find habits that I find are manageable. So for example, waking up at 5 a.m. Monday to Friday works because on the weekends I have a bit more flexibility. Working out, I'm not working out 80-90% of my capacity. I'm probably working out 60 to 70%, but working out 60 to 70% allows me to work out 6 times a week rather than doing it very intense and doing it 4 times. Journaling, because I've done it for so long, I don't want to ruin the streak of stopping it. Same with mindfulness. And then also there's days when I'm traveling and I'm not able to do what I want. And when I reflect at the end of the day, I've never performed as good as I have wanted. Yeah. So I think these are things that I keep in mind. And over years, it's not 100% perfect, but I think I'm 80 to 90% there. And as long as I can be 80 to 90% there and I see the results, then I'm happy with that.
The 10 or 20% that you're not there, how does it make you feel?
So there were periods when I'd be very tough on myself. But then that's when I had to be a bit more easier on myself. I've also got a professional coach that helps me in the background, who helps me in terms of working through challenges that I'm facing or things that I'm trying to figure out personally and professionally. I think he gave me a great advice where he was like, sure, you've done a lot, so don't be so hard on yourself. And also just recognize that it's just one day and tomorrow you can start again. So as long as I've got the principle of never making it 2 days in a row, then I'm okay with that. So everyone's okay to have one bad day. Everyone's okay really to have 2 bad days or 3 if you're traveling, but just don't break the streak that you've been able to keep.
Here we go. You mentioned earlier the importance of mentors. You've had quite a few mentors in your life.
Yeah.
Quite a few coaches.
Mm.
How important is that for you?
Yeah, so I think finding a good mentor can be a great accelerator for what you want, whether it's in boxing or professional or anything that you want to go into. If you find someone that you have a genuine respect and appreciation for,
Yeah.
and you ask them, look, please help, then 9 times out of 10, a lot of these people are very willing to help as long as they recognize that the person on the other side of the table is going to listen to my advice, but also do things and then come back and say thank you. And I think that's something that I learned early on in my career, where there were very senior people around the company. And I'll just shoot them an email, be like, hi, I'm interning for the summer because I've been told that I'm only going to be here for the summer. I would love to spend 10, 20 minutes with you just to understand about your career and try and figure out if I can learn anything from that. I would love the time if you can. None of them said no. And these are very senior people with reputable backgrounds. And then when I clicked very early on that not only can I connect with them, but I can also learn from them as well, the good things and the bad things, then this is just a cheat code for anything that you're trying to achieve in life. So I took the same approach in real estate. I found mentors. Some of them I had to pay to meet them and build relationships with, but that helped to accelerate things. And then now from a professional standpoint, I have a coach that helps me on challenges that I'm facing personally and professionally that I'm paying for. But there's also mentors that you can find around you, your parents, your cousins. My younger brothers sometimes teach me the best lessons. There's always people around you. As long as you have that student mindset, I think
my younger brothers teach me a lot and it annoys me. I'm like, come on, man, how did you know that? You know what I mean? Like, I should be giving you this advice, but you can learn off everybody. That's why I was key to put that in there. I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
I've asked you a lot of questions. It's been, I can tell you, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for coming on again.
I appreciate it, Terry.
Your future goals.
Yeah, future goals.
And for Ahmed Capital Group.
Yeah. So I think if I start off with Ahmed Capital Group. So at the moment we've set a goal that we want to get to a certain portfolio value and certain number of units by a particular time. I think the first milestone that we have in the near term years is getting to 100 units as quickly as we can. Now we're probably around the 15 to 25 stage with the projects that we have in the pipeline. But we want to try and get to that stage first. Now, once we get to that point, then on the way to getting there, with the profits that I'm able to generate, I also want that to continue to fund Pupils to Professionals. So Pupils to Professionals is the initiative where we're trying to help younger people get a higher ambition much early on in their careers, personally and professionally. So the profits that we get from ACG will go into Pupils to Professionals. With Pupils to Professionals, I have a goal where I want to help 10,000 students and kids think even bigger, whether that's about their career, whether that's going to bigger universities. There's an element where I want to help 10,000 kids. And then in the long run, the areas that I'm very passionate about are healthcare, because I've spent the last 11 years working in this industry, and I think it's very important for people to get healthier and have sustainable habits, and also education. That's an element that I'm very interested in. And actually, funnily enough, last year, I joined the board of Mayfield School, which is a school that I went to.
Oh, amazing.
So I joined there last year to try and understand from a governance perspective, how can we help the kids that are coming through the system and become a lot more bigger and better in their ambitions. So that's something in terms of spaces, healthcare and education, that I'm very interested in, where I would like to have businesses or interests or have roles of leadership where I can really influence those two areas for a lot more people in the future.
Amazing, man. I've got 2 more questions for you. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
sure, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you know, it's just come to my mind, and we haven't talked about it.
Yeah.
Because the reason I found out more about you was because of the Cambridge University. Respect to you. You gone and done an MBA. Am I right? MBA.
Yes, MBA.
Executive MBA
Yeah.
at the Cambridge University. So proud of you, man.
Appreciate that.
2-year course.
Yes, 2-year course.
Tell us how that come about.
Yeah, so similar, always having this education thing in the back of my head. Growing up, I did my undergrad, and then when I went to this large company, I met a lot of people that have got masters, that have got MBAs from Harvard, INSEAD, some of the biggest schools in the world. And that planted the seed where I thought, okay, if I get the opportunity to study, again, that lifelong student mindset, the humility to always learn, then I would love to have that opportunity to learn this skill set, network, and add it to what I'm doing at the moment. But then I got to the conclusion where I didn't want to be a full-time student and I wanted to do it part-time alongside my career and Ahmed Capital Group and all these other interests. Later on, in my later 20s, I got the opportunity to look at these programs, and the part-time programs are typically executive programs, which essentially means they're part-time and you do it in parallel to a career. What that also means is that the profile of student that they're looking for is typically a bit more mature. Now, I applied for Cambridge and a few other universities in that bracket at the end of 2021. The pandemic had also happened, so I thought, look, this is a good time to learn. And then I got the opportunity to go to Cambridge, which was one of the dream universities that I wish I had gone to at undergrad, but I didn't have the right thinking at the time to get in. It was a 20-month program. And what that meant was I was traveling in from Sweden and Denmark, where I was living at the time. I would travel in for a weekend of classes. I would meet 130 other people in the class from all over the globe. The average age was 38 years old. Lots of different industries from education, banking, private equity, pharma, healthcare, non-profit, lots of like a mix of people and backgrounds. But that really opened my eyes up to all the opportunities that were available and also the different pathways and the network. I think the reflections I got at the end, the content is great, but a lot of the content you can really learn on YouTube nowadays, listening to podcasts like this or interviews or whatever. The content is there, if I'm honest. The element that was really an eye-opening experience was the network that I was able to connect with, and also the history of the university and what that could unlock as well. And a lot of reflections, but always this element of lifelong learning became really important.
Everyone talks about you can learn a degree. You can get a learning degree anywhere.
Yeah.
But the networking part is the key, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes these universities stand out is the networking. I'm glad you brought that up because it's so important nowadays. Networking, and it always has been, hasn't it? Networking. Yeah. You can have the best education, but if you can't talk, if you don't know how to network, that puts you straight down automatically, don't it?
Yeah, it's definitely important. But I think I would also tell the listeners that for every person that I met in Cambridge that has had an amazing career, some of them advising even the Prime Minister and stuff, for every person I've met there, I've met someone outside of those circles that is doing a lot more in another field with no degree at all. So I think it really comes down to the personal person and what journey you're on. I'm not one of these people that says that you have to go to university to have the perfect career or you have to go to university to start a business. It really depends on what your personal objective is and what you're trying to do. For me personally, I always wanted to do an MBA because of the people that I met and the people that I really respected had this element of training to them. And also long term, I wanted to access a network where that would be helpful for me. But for every person that I've met in that space, I've also met people that have not gone to university and have gone on to achieve unbelievable things as well. So any path is possible. It's just having that mindset that you talk a lot about to make the most of it that becomes really important.
Amazing. Shuwel, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we leave today?
I think the last thing that I would close, Terry, is it's been amazing to reconnect with you. You still look younger than ever.
So do you.
And congratulations on the newborn as well.
Thank you very much.
This is a big milestone. I think the community that you created, the show that you've created has been great, and to see and follow your journey as well. Your family, I know how it's important to you, and what you've already achieved and where you're trying to go is also really inspiring. And I look forward to staying reconnected. We can't wait another 10 years for the next meetup.
But now you're in the UK, right?
Now, at least for this year, I will be in the UK more often, so we can definitely catch up in person. Hopefully, you can take me training. Just go easy on me for the training.
You need to go easy on me. I can see those guns sticking out. You're obviously doing something. I don't know what training you're doing, man. I mean, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming on. Guys, thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to going to the next one. Thank you. Cheers.